The latest intel on the 2026 NFL draft from insiders reading the tea leaves in a little bit of a period of truthfulness between the lies as it pertains to the NFL draft. Coming up on today's NFL Six Pack.
This is Locked On's NFL Six Pack. 6 bold takes from 2 guys who just flat out know football. NFL experts Matt Williamson and Brian Peacock bring pure NFL talk. Great takes, no fluff, just honest football talk. Crack one open. It's NFL Six Pack on the Locked On Podcast Network. Your team every day.
Welcome to the NFL Six Pack. Brian Peacock and Matt Williamson with you. Thanks everybody for tuning in and making us your first listen of the day. Thanks for making Locked On the #1 sports podcast network. Please consider subscribing on YouTube or wherever you are listening to this podcast. We've got a lot to get into, some notes from insiders around the NFL on what could happen in the draft. And it's a fascinating period, I think, right now. And it's a small window of time, Matt, where I think we get the best intel from the league on what's going to happen in the draft, because there's a lot of secrecy. There's a lot of lies. Draft boards are actually getting finalized now because, there's the whole, moving up, moving down. Media has to have a board throughout the year because they have to put something out there for people to see. But teams don't build their draft boards in September and November, right? So the boards are actually built now, and we actually get some good insight, and then teams start lying again in the couple of weeks leading up to the draft. So I think we are in the period of where there's a lot of truthfulness happening around the NFL and getting some good intel. So I want to go through a lot of this, and I want to
one thing I'll throw out there while you're talking this through, because I was fortunate enough to not be one of these guys, but in the room. I think what happens is right about now, there's many people in the war room, like the entire scouting staff. So
and people had to say,
there's a lot of leaks.
This scout had a report, that scout had a report. They know how the coaches and they've all hammered this big board out and talked about it, even if they don't know exactly what the big board looks like and exactly who the GM's going to pick. They've been in the conversations about how the big board was built and who's standing on the table for who. And if you are in the 49ers building and Kyle Shanahan's standing on the table for a wide receiver, you could bet that that's the guy they're going to go take.
Probably going to end up for the big chance, right? But there's a lot of leaks because at the very end, they kicked us low-level scouts out and kind of figured out their strategy, Mm-hmm. But right now, everybody's contributing. So there's a lot of leaks.
So really interesting time in the NFL. And we've got some insiders making mock drafts and what they're hearing from around the NFL. One of the things that is, and the other part of this, I think that's overlying with all of this, Matt, is that buckle up. Every year it's the same. Media, fans, everyone comes together and you get this groupthink draft board, and it's going to be so different. And it always is every single year. And this feels like one of those years because of how the board has fallen and how it's a deep draft, but not a top-heavy draft. Picks 15, 16 to 45 could go on in almost any order. I think we're going to see more shocking stuff, more surprising stuff potentially this year versus other years. And I think teams need to be prepared because you should never be shocked by the NFL draft. And I think we talk in absolutes about a lot of this stuff, about what a prospect can be. This team would never do this, never take this. Sometimes that's correct, but you get into trouble when you start talking in absolutes about the draft because it's going to be nuts and it's going to be a lot of fun. And I think that's what we should all be aware of before we hit the first round on Thursday night in a couple of weeks.
Yep, I think that's the one thing we can absolutely count on, especially without even the top of the draft's more up in the air than usual. So that means there's always going to be a ripple effect. The middle of the first round is going to be more up in the air than usual. The back of the first few rounds will be up in the air.
I mean, right now we know who the first pick is going to be, but the second pick is feeling a lot more like it's David Bailey than Arvell Reese.
Right. I mean, and it's not like, boy, this team loves this quarterback, they're going to get him. It's real up in the air. There are not any chalky picks.
And I think that leads us to the idea, and I'm going to go to Jordan Schultz's report here about potential trades at the top. And I think this is where it might start to get really interesting and really just light everybody's mock drafts on fire. If there's a trade in the top 3 picks and a team comes up and drafts a player, and all of a sudden everything's in a different order from then on out because everyone puts Jeremiah Love at pick 4. Well, if the Titans all of a sudden have an edge that they like at pick 4, well, now that changes every single person's mock draft out there that had Jeremiah Love at pick number 4 because everything starts to just fall and go into different directions, and chaos can really ensue. And so I'm going to go to Jordan Schultz report here. He says the expectation among many NFL teams is that 2026 draft will be one of the more trade-heavy drafts in recent memory, according to multiple league sources, specifically on the defensive side of the ball. Edge, cornerback, and linebacker are all strong and deep, while wide receiver is typically considered to be the most talented offensive position. Several executives I've spoken with believe we're likely to see a flurry of activity in the first half of round one. Additionally, because this specific draft lacks depth in the later rounds, many teams plan to pursue extra day 2, early day 3 picks per league sources. So the teams moving down will say, cool, I want to be in the day 2 area, but I don't want to be in the day 3 area. And other teams might say, here's all my 4th, 5th, 6th round picks because I'm trying to get up and get into this area of the draft where it's really strong, which is in the day 2 area. And of course, jockeying for position in the first round. And we have a bunch of teams with extra first round picks this year. And so they've got money to burn in their pockets.
I do think the extra first stuff absolutely matters without question. And maybe Atlanta, Indy, somebody like that wants to get back in the first. Jacksonville, who knows? Or at least move back up. I originally thought there would be fewer, at least first round trades than normal, just because I don't know who people are trading up for. And I don't think teams are going to be real excited about giving up future picks of any sort.
Well, I think that the place we could see it is the team that can really, so like, let's say the Cowboys, they have 2 first round picks. In the last mock we did, we projected a trade up for them, right? They're at pick 12. They can get a really good player that has a first round grade at pick 12.
Yeah.
They can't with pick 20, but even with pick 12, they can't decide which one of those first round picks they get. They get whoever is left of them. And then they get, if there's 15 first rounders this year, which is kind of like what we're hearing and feeling like there might be of like clean first round grades. Well, you don't really get to choose. And if you don't want a tight end, maybe Kenyon Sadiq is one of those and he's not your guy. Maybe, so you could go get a clean first round grade at the position you want if you move up from 12 to 7 to 2 to 3, wherever that is. And so I think that's why we'll see a lot of that potential movement. Maybe it's not a team trading both of their first round picks to go all the way up, but maybe they're trading one of their picks and a third to get up a little bit and make sure they get that position, that guy that they want.
It's kind of what you said, but I think there will be a lot of day 2 movement, whether it happens on day 1 too, but I think second and third rounders could get thrown around a lot.
I love the trade that we talked about. And actually your guy, Chris, the Locked On Steelers host.
Oh, Chris Carter. Yeah.
Chris Carter. Yeah. Because I'm trying to find it right now. Chris Carter had a mock trade between the 49ers and Steelers. And I don't know if you guys were talking to each other, but I had just texted you.
I have not heard from Chris.
It was crazy. It was like 2 hours after I texted you. I was like, look, the 49ers have no picks in the third round. They traded for Osa Odigizua. And there's a lot of good players in that third round area. And I'm doing mock drafts like, man, the 49ers got to close the gap between round 2 and round 4. And so I texted you. I was like, Steelers got 3 third round picks. Like what? They could be dance partners, right? The 49ers and the Steelers. Is there anything the Steelers could want to maybe move up from round 3 into late round 2? And you're like, yeah, maybe a wide receiver or an offensive lineman. Chris Carter, no less than an hour after that, put up a mock draft where he had the Steelers coming up from round 3 to late round 2, trading 2/3 for the 49ers second round pick 58 to draft Skylar Bell, who we like a lot, a wide receiver there in late round 2 to make sure they get their guy there. And so trades like that I could see happening, especially Steelers with 3 third round picks. They could really kind of throw their weight around a little bit in that area of the draft and really make sure they get all the guys they like on day 2.
They have a dozen picks overall, and there's not a dozen roster spots.
They're not going to draft a dozen guys. Yeah,
they're not going to draft a dozen guys, right?
And
Miami could.
Maybe it's moving up from 21 to 19. Like, is there that one player in the first round that they want to make sure that they get? So
they have a lot of flexibility, though.
A lot of that could happen. So I could see this being a really fun trade-heavy draft because of all of those reasons.
Which that adds to the fun for sure. I love that part.
Oh yes, and I hope that is the case. And I think this could be a bonkers draft. I've got some names coming up for you where fans are shocked and go, "Oh my God, that guy went in the first round." Remember Cole Strange a few years ago?
That's the weirdest one in recent memory.
Yeah, that was a consensus third round guy that a lot of people liked. Had a good Senior Bowl, had good workouts, and you start putting those things together, and teams draft based on their boards. So who could be those names?
O-linemen are hard to find.
Yeah, we got some good names on who that could be, and it might be O-lineman again this year, and maybe one cornerback that's got a lot of momentum right now going into the draft next. Today's episode of NFL Six Pack is brought to you by TurboTax. It is tax time. Not a lot of time left, but for a lot of us, the old way of doing taxes, well, it's a lot. So check out TurboTax. Trying to book an appointment is not the most convenient in the traditional way of doing your taxes. You sit in a waiting room, stack of papers, emailing back and forth, wondering if they really get your situation. But this year, you're getting a major upgrade. Intuit TurboTax now has in-person locations nationwide. You can meet face-to-face with a real tax expert, and your documents get uploaded straight to your TurboTax app on the spot. Just like that, you're done. Your TurboTax expert works to get you every dollar you deserve while you get real-time notifications as you go about your day. It's the relief of walking in and meeting a real person and walking out knowing your taxes are being handled right. So head to turbotax.com/local to find a store near you and book your appointment today. Thanks again, everybody, for tuning in and making NFL Six Pack your first listen of the day. And we've got a club for our everydayers. It is the Everydayer Club. For ad-free episodes of this show, access to a group chat with me and other listeners of this show, other football fans, tap the link in the show notes or go to nflsixpack.supercast.com. Okay, 6 of our best intel that we've heard here. I want to, in our second one, and a lot of this stuff kind of ties in together.
Sure.
I want to tout this isn't necessarily our intel from what we're hearing, but the thing that you and I have been pounding here on this podcast that is absolutely going to happen, and I want people to be prepared for, is the offensive tackles going high. And I think a lot of it plays into what we were talking about with those first round grades. And just as an example, I'm going to bring up the Detroit Lions, pick 17.
Great example.
They might be sitting there. Okay, we had 15 first-round grades. They were the first 15 picks. We have 2 major needs, offensive tackle and defensive end.
Mm-hmm.
Well, the defensive ends just aren't exciting right here.
They're not difference makers. Right?
And our pick in the second round, we've got the same grade on a defensive end that we would have here. So we're going to wait on that position. We know we're going to get it going in the second round. We cannot get
the tackles, right? Yeah, tackles won't be there.
It's not chances. We cannot get a starting tackle in the second round.
Right.
And so, you
might get the Northwestern kid in hope.
Yeah. It's we're going to draft the guy with 32-inch arms and maybe we end up with the guard. It's one of those things. So this could be a reason for movement in the draft, whether you're moving up to try to get the last tackle from the second round, or if you're trying to, move around and do those things. But that's why I'm going to have an offensive tackle at 17 in every mock draft. And I think every team you go down the list, everyone can use an offensive tackle. They're hard to get, and you can't get one in the second round, so they're going to go high. And a player like Blake Miller, I think, is a perfect example. Because people weren't excited about Blake Miller throughout the draft process, but you start looking at his profile. He started every game. All the coaches are going to love him. He's a plug-and-play starter. He comes in. He can pass block. He can run block. He might not be the second coming of John Ogden or whatever, right?
Yeah,
but he's a really good prospect.
Pro Bowls, right.
And he worked out really well too. So this is a starting offensive tackle. He's going to go high. So you probably have Blake Miller too low is kind of the idea.
I think that's really well said. And a lot of it's just supply and demand. There aren't quarterbacks to get you off your mark where you might take a Penix or a Nix in the middle of first round. Yeah. There's even the corners aren't super attractive. Like when in doubt, just give me a tackle. And if he's Rob Havenstein, Miller's worth your time,
Yes, absolutely. Yeah. So the tackles are going to go and they're going to go high. And when the Seattle Seahawks turn in their pick at 32, there's going to be no tackles left when the second round starts on Friday. That's my hypothesis. And maybe they go even earlier than that, even though there's a lot
really only 6 or 7.
There's 6 or 7, and a couple of them might be guards anyway. So now it's like 4 or 5 actual tackles.
Right. And Miller's one of those. He's not going to play guard,
And
perfect example.
And it's perfect because, say, Max Ahanator, who we both like a lot, is much more raw. And so the scouts might be like drooling. They're like, hey, man, Max Ahanator, he's going to be the best tackle from this class in 2028. And the coaches are like, well, Blake Miller's the best tackle right now. So that's the one I want. And so it'll be fascinating to see which team drafts which one of those guys and how they all jockey for position in the first round. So I can see Honachor fall into the second round, maybe, if anybody, just because he's raw. Lomu too. But at the same time, Lomu has feet, left tackle, not right tackle.
Yeah.
Honachor has the best raw tools of all of them. So who's going to be not afraid to develop and who just wants the right now guy?
I think it's extremely fascinating. I'm glad you used Miller as an example because he's perfect. Like the coaches are going to say, I got to block, whoever, Nick Bosa in week 1.
Yeah.
I love Honachor, but Miller has a better chance of getting that done,
Yeah. And I think a lot of times, like, coaches are supposed to be able to coach and develop, but they like the guys that are already ready too.
Coached and developed.
It makes their
not
job
as much
easier.
development in the NFL as you think.
It's not. You got to be a little bit more ready than you think in the NFL. That's for
Heck
sure.
Yeah.
And it sounds right now, Chris Bell, we talked about with the ACL. It's like, oh man, he's so good though, and it's fine. By year 2 he'll be ready. It's like, dude, by year 2 we're talking about these guys kind of crazy if they didn't do much in year 1. Even though we know right now that it should take a while for all these guys, really no draft pick should be for year 1 because this should be a 3-year plan to get a guy ready to be a star in the NFL.
And maybe the Jets or the Dolphins take a Chris Bell where he should go if he's healthy.
Yeah.
And just say, we're not in any hurry to get you on the field. But wide receivers that don't do hardly anything in their rookie year have a horrendous track record in the NFL. I mean, it's truly getting on a moving train.
It's hard enough anyway, and I think that's why the bust rate's so high for wide receivers, because it's hard to get a wide receiver that does much in his first year anyway, and that's with a full offseason.
Mm-hmm. And those quarterbacks don't want to wait for you. When you show up in week 10 and you got to play, and you got to play the Ravens in a couple of days, I don't have time to coach you up where to be in your route, and it's
especially
in the season,
especially a wide receiver. You look
especially wide receiver.
Tennessee or Ole Miss. Those offenses, they have to learn Japanese when they get to the NFL because they're not speaking that language at all.
Yes, and get off press coverage, which they've never done, and there's a lot.
Going huddle.
Oh yeah,
actually have
get in
a play
huddle,
call.
Right?
You don't look at 4 pictures on the sideline and then run a
Mickey
new play
Mouse, right.
and line up in the same exact spot every time. So I'm sure the heads are spinning for some of those, and offensive linemen and tight ends. You got to be smart guys and to be able to play early at those positions.
Interesting,
and work hard.
Yeah.
You mentioned corners there. How about this one? This is an interesting name to remember that you might want to start putting in more of your first round mock drafts out there if you're trying to be as accurate as possible. I want to go to a report from I think part of this comes from Dane Brugler's Beast on San Diego State cornerback Chris Johnson, whose give a S factor, quote unquote, is to the moon. I love that. That's first
so
of all,
good. Yeah.
That needs to be in every scouting report because it's super important. And that's such a great way to put it. Some people call it character or work ethic, whatever. The give a S factor to the moon for San Diego State cornerback Chris Johnson. Sterling character, according to everybody involved, still only 21 years old, good at the Senior Bowl. He was good in 24, jumped up his level to elite in 2025, has athleticism, has everything you're looking for. And if you want to find a player that goes higher than expected, find a guy who's got good tape, went to the Senior Bowl, played well there, went to the Combine, tested well. Now you have the makings of a guy who's going to go really high. And Matt Miller,
high character and low age,
right? So what are the reasons to not like a guy, right? And so Chris Johnson's one of those that's really stacking up a good pre-draft season. And Matt Miller from ESPN says he sent his rankings around to a bunch of scouts for feedback, and every single one told him to move Chris Johnson up. He's loved, especially once coaches got involved. So there you go.
Wow. Okay. I mean, you probably do the same thing with the Niners, but you analyze their 30 visits. And there was one visit for the Steelers that just was so much different than the other. And it was Chris Johnson. I'm like, they're not going to take a corner in the first round. He's not going to be there in the second, but they probably love him, which probably means 31 other teams love him.
And this is one of those groupthink things too, because you see all the same players in the same portions of the draft. But Chris Johnson was getting mocked pick 42, 45 in every single mock draft. You see 100 mock drafts and he's picked 42, but it's inconceivable that he could go pick 32.
Right.
That happens
in
a lot.
Draft,
like,
right. Yeah.
This guy's mocked in the second round in every draft, but it's some sort of a crazy reach if a team wants to take him 10 picks earlier. We see guys be moved 10 picks like nothing on draft day every single year. And if someone ends up in the first round that's not in everybody's mock draft, someone has to drop out of the first round that's in everybody's mock draft. We talked about this yesterday. Avion Terrell from Clemson, the corner.
No chance. No.
He ran a 4.65 for scouts. And you're not going to be a first round corner if you run 4.65. And some people might not have liked him anyway as an outside corner because he's only 180 pounds. He's not the biggest guy. So if you're small and slow, he might be a good football player in the NFL, but teams are going to be like, nickel only, and he can't be a first round pick for us. So Chris Johnson in the first round, Avion Terrell out of the first round.
I might even put Terrell in the third.
Possible.
Like we end the second round. Like, why is this guy still available? Because he doesn't have desirable traits.
Yeah. That is absolutely what happens. Next, let's talk about the multiple reports here from Lance Zierlein of NFL.com, what he's hearing on some edge rushers, Keldrick Falk, Kim Mesidor, safeties, guards. I think we got to talk about as well. And, some maybe traditionally not high value positions. Where are they going to go? How many of those players could get into the first round of this draft and more? Next. Today's episode of NFL Six Pack is brought to you by Indeed. We've all been there, seen workplace chaos because the right people have not been hired, or you just need to add one more position. Deadlines stacking up, inbox overflowing, and the one position you have to fill still sitting open. When the pressure's on and you need the right hire, this is a job for sponsored jobs. Indeed Sponsored Jobs helps you reach the people who actually fit what you're looking for: skills, experience, location. So you're not just hoping the right candidate stumbles across your post. And here's a stat that says it all. In the minute that I've been talking to you about Indeed, companies like yours made 27 hires on Indeed, according to Indeed data worldwide. So spend less time searching, more time actually interviewing candidates who check all your boxes. Less stress, less time, more results when you need the right hire. And cut through the chaos. This is a job for Indeed Sponsored Jobs. And listeners of this show get a $75 sponsored job credit to help get your job the premium status it deserves. Just go to Indeed.com/podcast. Indeed.com/podcast right now and support our show by saying you heard about Indeed here. Indeed.com/podcast. Terms and conditions apply. Need to hire? This is a job for Indeed Sponsored Jobs. Okay, here we go. A few good ones here that I like from Lance Zierlein of NFL.com. He says, digging around, I think Keldrick Falk, defensive end out of Auburn, goes a little earlier than he's being mocked by most. Hakeem Mesidor, Miami defensive end, might go a little later than I've been mocking him. Okay, let's stop there on the defensive ends. Neither one of these surprises me at all. Keldrick Falk is a player that I think GMs love. He was kind of high in mock drafts early in the process, has started to fall down back to the back end of round one in mock drafts, because I think when the media got involved and you and I are looking at tape or watching him and we're like, a lot of ability and size, but where's the sacks? Where's the flash? And teams see him and go, 6'5", 280 with his athletic profile? And guess what? We can't rush the passer until we stop the run first. I think of Michael Williams last year, who was the 11th pick in the draft. That's what Keldrick Falk is, I think, in this draft. And so don't be shocked how high he goes. I totally agree there. And Hakeem Mesidor, you're 25 years old and have a bunch of injuries. It's just not a first-round profile. I don't care if you like the tape, because it's not that impressive if a 24-year-old is beating up on 19-year-olds, man.
Yeah, exactly. I couldn't agree more on Mesidor. Like, I'm not sure he's even going in the first round, because the reason he's old is because he's had so many injuries. Yeah. I mean, and so it's a double whammy. And I definitely think he benefited from Bain a lot. I think he benefited from Jason Taylor an awful lot in terms of just maximizing what he has. So I don't think his ceiling is particularly high. I have mixed feelings on Falk. So the good part is, let's not forget what the league is doing defensively. They want to play lighter boxes and still to be able to defend the run, not get killed in the run game, but with lighter boxes so we don't get beat over the top. Well, I think Falk definitely fits that. But I still have reservations about the player, though. He's like the last guy off the ball. I don't think he's particularly twitchy. I don't see, maybe he can rush the passer as well as like the Eric Armsteads and Cameron Jordans on the inside. But I
I like the Armstead comp because I think that sort of,
Yeah.
traditional 3-4 defensive end, the big end, I think would be perfect for him. He's got length. He can control gaps.
Yeah.
Part of it is that Auburn scheme on defense too. And you see this at Georgia as well, because all these interior guys don't come out with most of a pass rush plan because they don't care. They're just like,
they don't care. Yeah.
They're just like, we're sacrificing your ability to rush the passer because we want you to take up blocks. And so they get these 5 stars that could be awesome. And they're like, we don't care about the rest of what your game is. We want you to be bigger and beastlier than the guy in front of you. And we'll let the other guys have fun. And so I think there's some of that going on.
There is
with Keldrick Falk in Auburn.
I wish he was twitchier though. And to me, you're still projecting. He's not an edge. I mean, maybe he is on 1st and 10 as a run stuffer type guy, but he's not an edge bender to me at all.
Boxes are getting lighter in the NFL, where traditionally,
that's important.
You used to see guys his size play the outside linebacker spot in a 3-4.
Yeah, right. And now he's like the 3-4 end.
Yeah, that's pretty wild. And he has just that type of his style of play is that. So he's going to go in the 1st round. Where I don't know, but I wouldn't be shocked if he comes off the board for a team that's switching to a 3-4 and wants that style of player. Say the Cowboys at 12. Wouldn't be shocked at all.
Maybe
Cowboys at 20. Maybe that's more likely. I don't know.
I wouldn't be thrilled if my favorite team took him. Yeah, I think there's not a lot of ceiling there, even though he's beautiful.
So the Mesidor thing too, and the tape is fun. He's a really good player, and obviously the big winner in all of this is Jason Taylor, the defensive line coach in Miami, because he can clearly coach guys up.
Oh man,
send your kids to Miami. If you have a defensive line child, send him to Miami. If you have a wide receiver child, do not send him to Tennessee.
Correct.
That's my advice for parents out there.
Yeah.
If you're trying to get your kid to the NFL,
give him the league. Yeah.
Yeah. And I kind of feel bad for Mesidor. So here's an article I found about him, and apparently he had to get like special cleats because his feet are so bad, and he missed all of a season because of foot injuries, which is not the type of injury you want to see, because those are the things that can reoccur and really haunt a player throughout his career. And I feel bad because he's like, man, it was a rough process. He's like, my feet are no longer an issue. He says this was an article from, I think, before the season started this year, but he's like, man, it was a rough process. And he's like, I really started off sad because it's the last thing you want is a season ending injury. And he talked about how hard he worked to get back. So I think he is a good player and a good kid and all those things, but it's just tough with this injury because he had this foot injury. He had to get special cleats because of it. So clearly it's a thing, right? And an ongoing thing.
It's a terrible sign.
And then he still missed games this year because of foot injury.
Yeah.
So it's not like it happened 2 years ago and it hasn't flared up. It's something that he has to have special cleats for even now, and still missed a game because of foot injury in this last season. And he's 25 years old because of that. And because of, and so it's just the tape you have to watch and be like, okay, it's much more impressive if a 19-year-old is, a sophomore is beating up on 22-year-old seniors, much less impressive if a 24-year-old senior is beating up on 19-year-old sophomores.
Yeah, you said a ton there, and as you were talking through it, I'm like, there's going to be 10 team doctors that say this is going to be a problem forever, and then the analytics folks would be like, Andy's old, 3rd round.
Mm-hmm.
I'm not saying he's going to go there, but there will be teams will just do that,
Or they just take him off the board in the 1st round. They're like, day 2, let's talk about him again or something like that.
I can't go to my owner with this.
Well, and sometimes with injuries, it's not, you don't get back on the board.
Yeah.
Like he's off the board, injury red flag. So he's over here in this other place.
And you have to defer to the doctors.
Right. It reminds me of, remember Johnny Newton a couple years ago?
Yes.
Defensive tackle Jerzon Johnny Newton out of Illinois, right?
Tape.
Yeah, awesome. He's like, this is a 1st round guy. He had foot problems, and it dogged him in his rookie season, and he hasn't gotten his career off the ground and going like I thought he would. And when Washington drafted him, he fell to the 2nd round. But he's a 1st round guy on tape. And Washington's like, this is a 1st round grade. And we're excited that we drafted him here. And it's never really happened for him so far in the NFL. And he missed time in his rookie season because of that. So that's kind of the player I think of. And I think in the end, that's probably where Mesidor ends up going, is in that 2nd round range. And a team's like, 1st round tape, we got a guy, but hopefully the foot thing doesn't flare up.
And Newton wasn't 25.
Right. Yeah. He was a properly aged guy.
Right.
And here's another one is Jordan Tyson. And I want to go to the beast. And this is the medical part of Dane Brugler's background on Jordan Tyson. And the tape is good, really good athlete. But if he falls out of the 1st round, you should not be shocked because of this. Medical history is a red flag. as he missed multiple games in each of his 4 college seasons. Missed 3 games as a redshirt junior because of a hamstring injury, which also sidelined him for most of the draft process because he still hasn't worked out. He might have a chance to work out like very last minute before the draft, right? Is that the
I
plan?
heard that yesterday. Yeah, that he has something scheduled like the next week.
So he's for sure got to do that and work out well if he wants to talk about the first round. If that doesn't happen, he's not going in the first round,
way.
in my opinion.
Right.
So that's sideline. That was in October, Matt.
He also has very short arms.
He's a narrow guy. He wins. He's a finesse type of a player. It's what he is. My comp for him is Jerry Jeudy, who did go in the first round, but it's kind of, it's like, looks good at times, but it's like, are you a football player when on that 3rd and 8? We need you on 3rd and 8. Are you going to be there for us and make a catch in traffic and those types of things? Missed most of 2025 spring practices because of we're going backwards, because of an ankle injury in March of 2025. So injured himself in October's hamstring, hasn't been able to do anything in the draft process since October. And then 6 months before that, in March, he had an ankle injury and missed all the spring practices before the season even started. He had before that, November 2024. So this every 6 months, he's got an injury that he's missing time because of.
All the time.
Broken left collarbone, November 2024, forced him to miss the Big 12 championship and ASU's playoff game versus Texas. Then you go back to November 2022, his freshman season was ended because of torn ACL, MCL, and PCL in his left knee. And that was his freshman season when he was at Colorado, and that sidelined him for most of the 2023 season. That happened in November 2022. And then Deion Sanders came in, and then he transferred to ASU. So that is the story of Jordan Tyson. Really athletic,
that's tough,
loose
man.
athlete, but a team is going to have to look past a lot, and that's going to break a lot of ties at the minimum, and you might not be on your board at all.
Agreed. And I don't adore his tape either. I think he has a lot of wasted motions through his routes. To me, all the things we just said says 2nd round, because we opened the show by saying, well, if there's going to be a lot of tackles, a lot of edges going, who's going to fall out around 1?
Yeah.
Guys like this. And
Terrell, Mesidor, Tyson.
Yeah.
Those are the ones that could.
And you can understand why.
That were mainstays. Find a mock draft that didn't have those 3 names in it over the course of the last 3 months.
Yeah.
So that's what we're talking
about. Everyone's going to have best available when day 1 ends.
Right.
How could they possibly still be out there? The team should trade up for them. Right.
5 hours later, it's on the ticker. Mel Kiper's talking. Best available. Mesidor, Tyson, AJ Terrell, or Avion Terrell. Right. So
you'll be getting tweets from Niner people. I'll be getting tweets from Steeler people. Got to trade up to 33 to get Tyson. How could he possibly have fallen?
Yeah.
Well, he's got a lot of stuff wrong with him.
How about a couple more spots here? Zerline says decent chance only 2 safeties go in the first, so that means Caleb Downs and 1 more. So that just means that
Thieneman probably goes.
Emmanuel McNeil-Warren is a high 2nd round pick instead of that's what we saw.
So was Enuari. That's not unusual.
That's not groundbreaking stuff. But here's one: a 2nd guard slips into the 1st round. So that's Ioane being the 1st, and he's talking about a 2nd guard slipping into the 1st round. Peter Schrager is very plugged in and does his mock drafts almost completely on ear to the ground stuff. Had Keylan Rutledge from Georgia Tech sneaking into the end of the 1st round. So there's a new name for a mock draft for you as well. Chris Johnson, Keylan Rutledge, if you're looking for some real dark horse 1st round players. There's Emmanuel Pregnon at guard. There's Chase Basantis at guard. Do you think we're going to see a little guard run here after the tackle run is over?
Yeah, I have mixed feelings because, you mentioned it off the air. It's a Linderbaum thing. The 5th-year option is not beneficial to interior linemen.
Yes.
But I do think, like, for example, I always talk about the Steelers. Steeler Nation thinks, we're going to get one of those 4 guards at 53. One of those 3 guards, Pregnon, Basantis, or Rutledge.
Yeah.
I'm like, I don't think you will.
Yeah, maybe not.
Everyone's like, we'll take the wide receiver at 21. We'll get one of those 3 guards at 53. I'm like, bet you don't. I bet they're going like top 45.
You might, but if you do, there's only going to be 1 and you don't get to choose, which might be okay with you. Right?
Yeah.
And which might be the reason that some other team doesn't at the end of round 1 take a guard. The 49ers need a starting left guard at 27. I feel like it's too high. I'd play the waiting game at guard. I would say, you know what? Maybe it's a good prospect. Maybe you really like Keylan Rutledge. Hope for him at 58. And if he doesn't get there, that's okay, because there's going to be a good end or edge rusher. There's going to be a good wide receiver. You wait and see. And so that's why I think 2nd round is probably where we're going to see all those guards go. But they're good prospects.
Seattle at 32 could do it. That was their worst starter But I know they just took Zabel. They
God,
could
yeah,
do
2 first-round guards. What a weird way to build your football team. A safety,
right?
slot receiver. Yeah, funny team.
It is.
But there you go. So that's kind of where we're at with the draft intel, Matt. You want to throw anything else out there before we go?
No, it's funny you brought up the guards because I think those. I mean, Ione's gonna be long gone, but those 3 that we mentioned, I might go in the top 40. Yeah, I mean, I think they're going to be very sought after.
Very scheme dependent too, because you watch Pregnon and he's just annihilating people. Then you watch Basantis and he's kind of the opposite, where he's kind of just average anchor. He plays with a good demeanor, but he can get out and move. And if you're doing wide zone, you're like, oh, this guy can get out and hit people on the move. And he's super athletic. He's a good pass blocker. And so, kind of different styles for different folks.
Rutledge is a fun watch.
My comp for Rutledge is. And by the way, I did Rutledge and Jennings Dunker's kind of another name for guard. I watched them back to back, and I was like, man, Jennings Dunker looks the part until you press play.
They're not even close.
Rutledge is so much better in every way.
He just destroys people like they beat up his mom in the old neighborhood. He loves it.
If you don't account for a haircut, Rutledge is just a 10 times better prospect, to be honest with you.
I just heard this the other day, though, and it's probably from since the Beast came out. He was in a bad car accident just a couple years ago, almost had to have a big toe amputated. And there's all kinds of quotes from anyone that's ever been around him. Like, he'd have played without the big toe. He's the toughest MFer in the planet. But
Rutledge?
Yeah.
Oh, wow. I hadn't heard that. Okay.
Yeah. But there is a big toe flag from a car accident. Yeah.
He's going to drop out of the draft now.
Didn't look like it on tape last year.
No, but my comp for him is SpongeBob SquarePants, because he is a square top human being with skinny legs. And before you hit play, Dunker looks the part, has bad feet. Dunker's not a tackle, by the way. If anybody's talking about him as a right tackle,
no,
that's not going to happen. Rutledge does not look the part, bad body, and then he gets out there and kills people and is really athletic. So it's fun.
It's funny. I was going to have a cartoon character too, but mine was the Tasmanian Devil. But he's built like SpongeBob.
Yeah, he's like looks like SpongeBob, plays like Tasmanian Devil. That's
it's bonkers.
That is Keylan Rutledge, Georgia Tech. Maybe a first rounder. Let's go. It's getting fun, Matt. I think we're in a truthful.
Oh, it's getting real fun.
We're in a truthful part of the draft process right now, and next time we speak, they're going to be all lies again. So
it's back to lie season.
That's where we are.
Yeah. Yep.
Thanks everybody for tuning in. Let us know what your favorite truth or lie is in this draft process, and Matt and I back next week right here, the NFL Six Pack.